Elite Digital Radio. Download the app for free. Subscribe now.
Kick it off,
tell
man.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Elite Digital Radio presents the Elite Podcast. Elite Digital Radio is now available on Apple and Android. Elitedigitalradio.com. Elite Digital Radio, the IG page. Elite Digital Radio presents the Elite Podcast, the YouTube channel, and the Elite Digital Radio is now also available on Spotify. It's not just a name, it's a lifestyle. Season 2, episode 18, the Cannabis series. Elite Digital Radio presents the Elite Podcast. The Elite Podcast will provide a platform of conversations and interviews that will discuss diverse intellectual content that may resonate with you or to you in our culture. Tell a friend to tell a friend.
The Elite Boys is back at it again.
I'm your host, most hated 6Ds, alongside my co-host,
Laws 24.
Peace, Laws. How you, man?
It's another banger, bro. We got the old High Times judge coordinator coming in to school us on how to run a show and do things. We're going to promote his new show. We got a good one this week, bro.
Hey, Elite Podcast followers, tonight we back. Season 2 of the Elite Podcast, the Cannabis series. Growing up, you know what I'm saying, I can't speak for everybody, man, but this was one of the most influential magazines in my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, just the culture, the articles, the artists, the pictures, you know what I'm saying? Being able to actually see the flowers in the articles that matched up with the flowers, reading the articles to actually learn about the plant, getting into the cups, you know what I'm saying? And just always being amazed with this man. Elite, tonight we got a treat. Please help us welcome former High Times Cannabis Cup competition director, Sean Black, to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Peace,
Thank
man.
Thank you.
I appreciate you giving us your time today, man. How are you?
Doing great. You know, it's just after dinner time now, so I'm having joined my after dinner smoke and having some great conversation with good people.
Absolutely. Hey, man, before we get started, Sean, let me get our shout outs out the way, man. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I gotta give our shout out to you, man, for being with us here today, man. Sean Black at Blackie's High Times. You know what I'm saying? Let me shout out my girl, Soul Gas and Glassworks. I gotta shout out my people, of course, to Cal Official, bye to Cal. My new peoples that I just linked up with, Master Tina Key, and of course, Red Hot Cello. And my boy TT over at Smoke Chronicles as well. All right, I had to get that out of the way, man. I've been slacking, so now I'm good, man. But before we dive in, man, let's you give our listeners a little background information about yourself, where you from, where you grew up, you know what I'm saying, how you grew up, siblings, whatever.
I grew up originally in New York, went to school in New York City for a couple of years, and then my parents got divorced, and I moved to a boarding school in Connecticut and finished off there in Connecticut, just across the border. So I'm a New York and Connecticut guy in New England. I went to college in Yukon for about 9 years.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, and I guess my days started early then. I was definitely kind of like the Ryan Reynolds, the person that was at school a little too long and lowered a lot of my friends' GPAs because I was the guy that just put off life and went to school for as long as my family would let me go. Yeah, and that was kind of what led me to I think joining the Cannabis Cup party and running Cannabis Cup parties. You know.
Okay. I mean, I really don't even want to ask too many questions, man. I really want to hear your story, man. But let's talk about this plant and when it really became prevalent for you in your life.
Oh my gosh, I was lucky. We have a flower farm in the family. It's a peony and lilac farm in Connecticut, and so my mother was always around flowers in general, and my father owned a wholesale flower shop in New York City. So I was kind of a flower child, so to speak, as a kid. Okay. And my parents were very progressive. They found me smoking at about 13 years old. And instead of saying, you're not allowed to smoke, and I'm pretending I'm not smoking, and, we turn each other's head, they decided to have a real voice in my shaping and education with cannabis and said, listen, if you're going to do it here at home. Don't get stupid and do it out and get in trouble. If you're going to get it, we'll get you something that's safe and stuff like that. We don't think you're old enough, but if you're going to do it, here it is, and provided, a safe space for that to happen. And it slowly, became a realization to me that other parents that weren't doing that kind of was shaping a stigmatism with a lot of people by hiding it, making it have a sense of shame to some people.
Right.
Rather than being able to smoke out in the open, you had to feel bad about doing it. And that did not exist with my parents, my household.
All right. Okay. So I was getting ready to say as far as your early influences, but I guess that's directly from your parents, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I found High Times magazines when I was a kid, and right next to the centerfold Playboys on the walls when I was 14, I had the centerfolds of High Times magazine too. So I was the same person that reads my articles now that was then, and it's come full circle because I get to see those beautiful buds, and now you get to actually smoke them yourself, and that was always a dream for someone that was reading a magazine.
Dream for everyone.
Sure.
Okay, so
And
no, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, and one day my mom she walked into my bathroom, and I had erected a grow set in my bathtub, and I must have been 14 at the time, and
at 14, sir?
well, like I said, I lived on a farm, and there's stuff being grown. My mom had her own patches out in the yard, and I wanted to grow what you could see in the magazine, and I'd come quickly to the realization that the outside stuff wasn't as picturesque and the stuff that you saw in the magazines. So I erected with PVC pipes a kit in my bathtub that would sit in there that I could kind of pull down quickly. But I came home from school one day, and there's a note on my door saying we could talk. And when I got downstairs, I played a little dumb, and she goes, what that is upstairs? I said, what is that upstairs? She said, well, that's half mine.
Oh.
And I realized I was being rolled by my mom.
She said that's half mine, huh?
If you're gonna grow up there, I want to try it. I want to make sure you're doing it right, and let's learn. And that was part of education of growing up, growing potatoes, tomatoes, peonies, lilacs, and cannabis. Certainly for personal consumption.
Gotcha. So it really just became like it was regular. Not even became. It was regular to you and your family.
Sure. And our house kind of became the place in our area where kids came and we were safe space. My parents would take everyone's keys away. Kids slept over all weekend. I got in trouble for school because the school started on Monday, and there's a couple of schools where the kids still here once, and that's a whole other story. But it was a quite a place, especially back then. We're talking the 80s, and that was kind of progressive for back then. You could have your children taken away. You still can, and especially out here in some of the nether regions of the East Coast and Central America. That's why we can't, forget to keep it going right now.
So, with all of that being said, you know what I'm saying? What led you, or what even made you come up with this idea of the High Times Cups?
Well, I didn't come up with the cup. It was actually something that existed and was originally thought of by Stephen Hager, who brought it forth and had his own vision and had a great appeal and connectivity to Mother Earth and natural homeopathic part of it, and certainly the timing being in the 70s. There was a different attitude about it. It was pre-AIDS, and love was still in the air, and it was before crack had come out, and so it was not quite as demonized as once that drug war on drugs really started, and that brought us to being able to bring it here in the U.S. starting in 2010. I think it was the first Cannabis Cup that we actually did here in the U.S. That I was a part of. And still doing in Amsterdam as well. But they've been going on for years, since the 70s.
Okay, so you said you started in 2010?
I started with High Times writing a little bit before that, but in 2010 is when I started getting involved with the Cannabis Cup, and eventually making it to the director of the Cannabis Cup competition. Certainly on the intake team for quite a while. I'm one of the families that is very lucky to be kind of related to High Times through the story of High Times. It started by the Forsad family, and their roots kind of run deep within High Times. It's a wonderful story. And my family, too, worked with High Times, especially years ago before it was really legal, certainly before Prop 215. Doing work in that field was a dangerous proposition. And in order to do business and not get in trouble, you worked with family and friends as opposed to, hiring regular, say, event people. Because, at the time, there was a lot of gray areas that you were covering, a lot of green gray areas, Right. And so it was very, I wouldn't say nepotistic, but that's how, kind of evolved. And my family, my brother, Craig, was the director of technology there. And at the time I was growing, and it was kind of a great setup to get a desk at High Times. I'd come and, show him what I had and come back at the end of the week and show him again what I had. And people that came filtering through the office really enjoyed what I was leaving behind. And that eventually led to me writing and eventually getting involved when we decided to start doing the Cannabis Cup in the US. And that's a whole other world. That's when everything changed. That's really when being at the forefront of really the evolution of cannabis nowadays in modern time here in the US. A wonderful time to be front of me.
Well, let's talk about it.
Well, Tony was there for part of it. It's it was a situation where you can build it and people will come, but a lot of people don't want to be that gazelle to try to go first across the river, maybe get caught by the alligator. And so it was always interesting doing a cup or an event for the first time in a new city, because people didn't really believe it was going to happen. The first time we did it, we didn't even really believe it was going to happen. We did it in San Francisco. And to bring something that had been so storied and so kind of foreign from Amsterdam, but to do it at home and to be able to watch, a football game while smoking cannabis in a party of 4,000 people, and have people drinking and people from all walks of life, but not a single fight, not a single, just it re-emphasized the power of cannabis and what it could do once it was kind of opened up. And 2010 was amazing for that. And that's where we kind of see the evolution of a lot of the strains and concentrates and different forms of cannabis that really started to explode at the time.
Right. Okay, so how many cups would you say that you were, directly responsible for or under, or had something?
I think I was involved with around 70 Cannabis Cups or so. They kind of melded into one another, and there was certainly a time where there was several Cannabis Cups in the country, sometimes twice in the same state.
Man.
Well, those are places that really, there wasn't a lot going on, and we'd show up at, say, Michigan, and people were so starved to just be able to have a place where they can congregate and do something. And the first time we went there, we kind of got raided. It was actually downtown Detroit at part of a barbecue joint. But it was a great time until the cops came, and I was actually standing outside, I started seeing people pitching their pot plants over the fence, flying over the side, landing on the sidewalk. And I'm going, what the hell is going on? And then I see bags of weed come out, and I pop over, and there's a group of cops that are kind of walking past each vendor, and before they got to reach each vendor was tossing their stuff over the side. So we gathered all that stuff, kind of, kept it safe for them, ran inside, and they kind of busted one person and said, no one else is allowed to have cannabis in here, and they kind of shut it down. And it was a little bit of a bummer because it was the first time we were there, and they were hassling us. But it really changed the atmosphere of the event. It became very activist. That people were furious. Here we were a couple blocks away from the football stadium. They have their own police station there because people are getting drunk and acting like idiots and schmucks and fighting. You can't have more than 10,000 people there without there being craziness. Here we have a couple thousand people, and the only problem we have are cops coming in, harassing vendors for tax money and bullshit. And so it really changed that kind of focus there. But to be able to bring it to places that never thought we could do it, Seattle,
Denver, Seattle,
Denver, yeah,
San Francisco, Oakland, fucking Orange County, fucking San Diego, Michigan. I mean, come on, bro. Like, seriously,
Jamaica, Amsterdam,
Jamaica,
countries. It's really been a great quest to find the best cannabis in the world. And, I love the effect that these things have. We went to Jamaica, and they have some great strains down there, but really their growing techniques were not really up to par. So we went down there, and they kind of showed that, a lot of them didn't want to listen to what we had until we showed them cannabis. That's where the common denomination was. Once you love cannabis and you see great cannabis, you want to smoke it. And then if it's great, you're going to want to know how did you get it? How did you do it? And they listened to us, and people like Bubble there, and those guys went down there and helped them refine their techniques because they were growing great genetics, but in the jungle. And in the jungle, they don't have proper drying atmosphere. So they grind in a humid outdoors, which is, you're never going to achieve what you need there. And seeing the effect of these events, not even only our events, but any events really, where people can gather and kind of show each other and express different genetics and trade genetics is so valuable, especially when it was so black market and underground and wasn't even available. I mean, still even to this day, it's very difficult to legally obtain seed. I mean, in most places it's not really, I think in Texas right now, I read that if it's 0 to 1 grams of oil, it's minimum 2 years. And then if it's 4 grams, it's 10 years. And if it's more than 400, it's a lifetime in prison for oil. You get caught with an 8-ball of cocaine, you get out on the Friday.
What was the kid got arrested for serving the tray of brownies? It only had like 1.8 grams total, but they weighed it at 3-point-something pounds. Even after fighting it, going through all the bullshit and all the legalization and everything they could prove, they still ended up giving the kid 20 years.
Sure. It's the disparity across this country right now, or really the world, is just so heartbreaking.
I myself
there's governors
in Nebraska,
and senators that are on boards and making millions of dollars in some states with cannabis companies, while there are people that are sitting in jail in Russia for a big time.
I was about to say, look at Brittany Griner. I was just about to say, look at Brittany Griner, man.
Yeah.
She was being left over there in captivity for freaking carts.
Yeah, and I wonder, there's so many different facets that make it kind of like me wonder and really expose things. Would it be different if she was an NBA player? Would it be different if she was a white player? I mean, how many different realms of this are there that shows that really that are being exposed in something like this? And for us to say that, not to support her, but now New York's allowing cops not to have cannabis tests, but they're allowed to have guns. The disparity is so across the board, it doesn't make any rational sense. And that's something that needs to happen pretty soon. Unfortunately, the government right now kind of used it as bait a little bit and really hasn't moved on it much. And hopefully, as a federal thing, we can really attack this from the front and not reschedule, but deschedule cannabis.
Definitely. Now, hey, Sean, man. Now you said you were there at High Times for a little period of time, and you said you built your way, or you worked your way up the ladder. But throughout that process, were you developing your own concept of what you wanted to do, as far as possibly being in the position to be a cup coordinator or director?
Well, it really started out as growing cannabis, and the house strain we had was strawberry coffin, guava chem, and certainly the chem line, because we're in New York, and that's chem and sour diesel is where we're at. And it's very odd at the time, because it was illegality in New York City, which is where the magazine is located at the time. They needed cannabis to use for photo shoots, and what better way to do it but to rent my cannabis for photo shoots, and funny enough, give it back to me when you're done. And that was the first real legal transaction that I had with them as far as paying for props. And which then evolved into saying, well, can you want to write about this wonderful stuff we're displaying on photos? And going back home and looking at covers and seeing the cannabis and having my own jar of it right there, just my own little personal joke and being happy, and that evolving into writing about it. And then really my evolution was in 2000, I think it was 10, going to the Cannabis Cup and seeing, we'd had honey oil in the past from growers where we would dip joints, and it was very runny, very oily, but nothing like what we had encountered in Amsterdam, meaning hash bean. I don't know if you're familiar with hash bean, who's kind of at the beginning of the whole wax evolution of putting cannabis in a vac oven and bringing it to vac and kind of proofing up and looking like almost big golden buds at the time. And he was doing, he was the only person on YouTube at the time that had a bunch of videos. And unfortunately, a lot of them are gone to the nethers these days. But having met him, and then everyone there kind of falling in love with it. And I think someone from Denver had brought a swing arm, which was the first real way to smoke oil, other than using a hot wand for water hash. And that was just kind of like a nail, but it was a pad that you would heat up and it would swing under a bell.
Metal swing arm?
Yeah. And
metal swing arm evolved into the globe and the...
Yeah, and then it became with the glass nail and dome. And then we all loved domes because we were allowed to buy glass that wasn't thousands of dollars. You can get in by buying domes and having wonderful, crazy Rob Morrison figures or Tammy Baller or all these wonderful playthings, or concentrate dishes for a little while to put your concentrate bits in. But this whole evolution was just so rapid, so fast to be able to have a front seat of this, starting, like I said, around 2010 with that swing arm in and that first hit of that dab. When you first hit that dab for the very first time, if you love cannabis, you know what it is. It's 0 to 100. And especially back then, we were doing nothing but glowies. We had no idea about temperature control and terp preservation and not scorching. The whole idea of, the THC being the gasoline and the terpenes being
it brought in the whole D-nail, E-nail revolution. Yeah. Remember everybody on titanium? Titanium moved over to ceramic, and then Wave dropped the first awkward little banger. And it was so small, you'd always suck the dab down the neck, and that evolved into the deep dish bangers, and yeah, bro.
Well, that actually changed it, and this is what really fucked up a lot of people, was that changed it from then being a male to a female, because there was so much oil going down that it would wind up all over on the outside of your rig and all over everything, which is a fucking mess. So if you change it to a female or rather a male piece going into a female, all the oil wind up in the rig rather than opposed to everywhere, which saved a lot of people, especially at first being claim food and stuff like that, edibles. But really just change everything. And like right now I have, this is a coil, one of the early coil monies, right? It's worth the camera there. But, it's got that old male joint.
Exactly.
It's and funny these male joints, we love them. But honestly, they're hard to go back and smoke with. And I love domes, but that weight on the front.
Without a doubt, the original.
But yeah, so being in going to Amsterdam and seeing that, and then having people make specific gear specifically for that, and becoming kind of like a championship rod that everyone was happy to run around and give everyone their first dabs. I have a wonderful list of friends and people that you give them your first dab and you can see the light and just a change. And if it's something that you're really passionate and love, you're always looking for a little bit something better. Whether it's a nicer car or a nicer piece of artwork or the better piece of chocolate cake or whatever your passion is. But in the case is cannabis, and if you love cannabis and you hit a great dab of hardcore OG, that light goes off in you, and now your palate's been elevated a bit, and now you know how to appreciate cannabis a little bit more and search for even the better one, and the next better one, and the next better one.
The hardcore, the Paris, the Josh D. Come on.
White Walker. We're talking all of the Snoop Dogg OG, anything OG, the SFOG, SFVOG.
SFDOG and Mimosa were they ruled Shatter for, I swear, all of 2014. It was so funny. Those flavors were just so abundant at that time.
In New York and in Boston, especially, 20, 30, even 40 years ago, no shit. that was really our palate, was because we didn't have a huge variety like they had out on the West Coast where they can openly trade. You had Triangle. Here there were smaller, more clandestine grows, and we bred for strength because we didn't have that stuff. So we picked out those strains like Ken 91 and Sour Diesel that were 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit, because that was our focus as opposed to out
Strawberry
west.
Fields was a Vermont strain too, though, so we did have our one gambit of fruit, but for the most part, it's mainly gas.
But around those times of the Cannabis Cup is where people started thinking in terms of a broader net. And so people started breeding and thinking in terms of what are people's palates already tuned to, and those are the food flavors. That's why you start seeing a lot of food flavors, whether it's gelato cakes, cherry, anything that has a word with a flavor of food in it. Great.
It started with Tangy. Ever since Tangy, it's been a fruity. It's been something that's had strawberry, banana, Tangy, like whatever, grape stomper, whatever it was. There was some type of very fruity,
and a lot of those really appeal to a wide audience because that's where their palates are already trained to those foods. The Ken Dog, it doesn't appeal to a wide audience. That tastes like
it's softer and easier for kids to accept versus us. We had the pines, right? The lemony. We lived off of the pines and the skunks and the old school flavors. Our day wasn't as fruity as it is today.
Yeah, the problem is if you naturally start selecting those fruity things, it tends to be not as heavy of a high, sometimes a little bit more of a flavor, but a little hollower in the experience. And then that led to people kind of using that idea of terpene over even the experience, the effects, for people to kind of not cheat, but understand and how to use that in competition. For example, when Jen Doe entered Strawberry Cough, she did a hash, and she knew to pick it very, very early because it was way louder in terpenes, and before it gets heat and turns in from terpenes to hydrosols and kind of deadens it, you to pick it early. And the thing is, when you pick it really early like that, it tastes and smells great. The highs are like a 5-minute high, but if you're judging a lot of cannabis and a lot of oils and stuff, you tend to be high for the 2 or 3 weeks that you're judging the whole time. So the things that tend to pop through are flavor, smell, the intensity of it. And it takes a very trained person to really be fine enough tuned to feel the difference and kind of lift the high through the other things when you're actually sitting around and judging for, I think at one time we had 150 or 180 entries for 2 weeks to judge, which is a tall order, of course.
You say 2 weeks. We never had 2 weeks. You guys give us 7 days.
For some Cannabis Cups, we had 2 weeks, and some we had 7 days. The World Cup, we had 2 weeks for it. The World Cup. Okay. The one that we really needed 2 weeks for was, I think, might have been the first year that you got involved when we did it in Denver. It was your first year judging, maybe? But we did 2 simultaneous cups at the same time. There was the U.S. Denver Cup, and then there was U.S. Medical Denver Cup. And that was crazy because, I think we had 700 or 800 entries.
That was the whole Miley Cyrus.
Yeah. And there's, stories and videos and things that I got to wait till, a couple more years go by before. And movies and books will be coming out shortly, but yeah, there are times where we would have Cannabis Cups and doing intake, and how would you do intake 20 years ago or 10 years ago in a framework where aren't dispensaries and stuff? Are you doing it and advertising it out loud and having companies come with it? And so what do you do then? There's a lot of interesting methods and things that we had to do to be as safe as possible, not only for ourselves, but those people that are involved. And, the worst thing that we could do, or at least in my mind, was we have 10,000, starting at a couple thousand, at some point 30, 40, 50,000 people coming to enjoy the weekend with us. And if we slipped up or done something wrong, that whole would crumble, And
so let's continue into that, John, and let's talk about realistically what goes into being a director of, as you say, when you got 50, 60,000 people.
Well, I mean, those are people that are attending, but we have, I would say if you had 77 Cannabis Cups and just averaging a couple hundred entries per cup, that's, 20, 30, 40,000 entries or so that we would have.
Definitely more than a couple hundred entries, because there were cups that I remember when I judged San Diego. I did the concentrate. There was 156 entries.
But when I said there was 750 entries in Denver, that was for the medical cup, and then there was the U.S. Cup. So now you're talking 1,500 entries to deal with doing intake with 1 week and then getting things ready. But really, what is being the director of the Cannabis Cup entail? First, you gotta find judges, and that's a tall order, because not everyone can take 2 weeks off or a week off and dedicate themselves to it, and also have the palate and the knowledge and the wherewithal and the ability to go through it. Funny enough, there's a lot of stuff to learn about that, to realize that we didn't want all experts. I didn't want all people like me, because there's people like me that just take OGs and the heavy stuff. I wanted older people that were looking for things that weren't so heavy, weren't interested in THC and stuff like that, but they wanted something.
I was going to ask you,
like a Puta Rojas or Santa Marcha, Acapulco Gold, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then we want a breeder who understood a little more what he was looking at as far as how the genetics of what it is expressed, and a cultivator, and even starting in employing concentrate makers and everyone. So we get a little bit facet of everything. And when you let everyone kind of judge it just straight off that way, what you find is that you don't necessarily get what's the best in a competition, because you'll have a lot of people that have their tastes in different categories, but everyone's number 5 is kind of a baseline. And so sometimes we would find that everyone was kind of like, that wasn't what we thought. No one wanted to think this is the best. And so the way that we dealt that was incorporating lab results, and then finding an algorithm that kind of, when we came together, people understood and made more sense to them. And then we would say, okay, if these are the top 5 that came out between the lab results and all the judges, now we have the judges in a room, we can say the number 1 that was picked has to be in the top 3, but you guys can move the top 3 around as a discussion here. We can sit here in an open forum and talk through it. And we did that for a couple of years, and slowly tweaked how we weighed the different scores and the labs, till when we were coming back and convening, we were basically there every time. We still allowed that input. But yeah, it's not only just numbers. It's not only just that. That's how a lot of commentators like Taco Bell. If you've only had Taco Bell's bomb. But Taco Bell's not very good. But everyone will settle for Taco Bell if they're in a strange foreign place, right? Or most people will.
Absolutely. Shit. At some point in time, you don't have to Taco Bell.
4 in the morning, right?
All right. So, I mean, with all that being said, man, what happened, yo?
Me with High Times? Right now, I'm actually not writing or working with High Times. I'm working several different competitions that we have going on here in the Northeast, starting with the Turktown Throwdown in Massachusetts, which has been around for a couple of years, and then we're throwing something that we've got kind of a little closer to our heart here, which is the Tournament of Terps in New York. I don't know if you're very familiar with the scene in New York right now, but it's quite honestly the best scene in the world for cannabis ever. You're allowed to have 3 ounces of cannabis. You are allowed to smoke it wherever you're allowed to smoke cigarettes in the public. They are slowly forming a tier to be able to give licenses, and they're starting with people that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, things a lot of states say, but those don't actually happen. And they're actually promoting people from within the community to advise and become part of the boards. Through the years, you've seen different states go legal, but there's just minor politics that slows these cogs down. And it starts with people becoming in charge of things that they don't really know what they're talking about. If you're in charge in Denver, especially at the beginning, of making rules about hydrocarbon solvent extractions and you know nothing about them, how can you make any rules or laws about them that make any sense? And that's kind of gone through the whole board, because you have to realize that there's a new sector that doesn't exist. The experts that were there were simply us stoners that loved cannabis and delved and kept delving into it and lived it as a culture and wrote about it. And so that really became a driving force.
So you said you got these 2 events coming up.
Say again?
You said you had these 2 events coming up.
Oh yeah, so I'm sorry. It's only in the cannabis. So here in New York, we have some great laws, and they're allowing us to consume together. They're actually don't want people retailing and selling that are going for licenses. They're telling that's how they're using the enforcement. Is they Mayor of New York has said, please, we're not going to enforce anything because there really aren't any laws at the moment on the books. There's no way for people to buy any real cannabis except for in the medical field there. So they're turning a blind eye to that. So the framework that's coming up is something to celebrate. They're allowing personal grows and micro licenses to regular people. And that's really the beginning of unlocking cannabis and descheduling it, not rescheduling it, is allowing people to grow it and trade it and treat it like a commodity. If you're gonna profit off it after a certain point, certainly, but you should be able to have farmers markets. And we know that having people grow, allowing non-commercial grows, this is what really pushes cannabis and the progress in the quality, not these huge commercial grows. I love some of these guys that are out in California and stuff, but they're commercial grows that are growing large amounts of cannabis and are using machine trimmers and they're not able to spend the time, say as a home grower that's got 6 plants, that talks to each plant and touches each plant every day and, shows it love and comes out with some heat, And so that's a form that we're celebrating here for the Tournament of Terps for home growers. And we're going to experience with the judges' experience in mind. So on August 28th at Long Island Glass in Huntsville, New York, we'll have things like our gadget corner, which will show the evolution of the nail and the different things in cannabis right now. Of course, the peak, the proxy will be there to show how we started from torches and hot knives on stoves to things like the proxy, where glass blowers can plug in beautiful pieces and take experiences to new heights. We'll have a display of all the entries. Of course, it's the home of the Kayak Club there, so they have a dab bar that's always set up. We'll have a couple seminars going on. We're going to do a little class on how to pick the perfect pot and how to judge cannabis, because a lot of people don't understand how to pick great cannabis. I think Tony and I were talking about it earlier. You can look at cannabis and be the greatest thing, but when you smoke it, it does nothing like it does when it looks. Or it smells great, but when you go to smoke it, it doesn't really get you very high. And so there's a lot of different ways to incorporate how to be able to judge pot before you smoke it. And one of the biggest clues is you're really not looking for things that are good. You're looking for things that are wrong when you're first looking at cannabis. If there's burnt tips, if it's overly grown and muscular, like, it's been steroided up and a car can run over it, it doesn't even squish. Is that a good thing? Calyxes that are overgrown, foxtails, things that the different contaminants like cat hair, that we see quite often.
Dust, dander, shit, poop.
PM, white mold. A lot of people say it's safe. Look at the crystals, but
right
it's
PM. Things to look for are telltales. I'm sorry. I said, so you saying like as a judge right off the bat, you looking for all the negatives first before you even mess with the bud?
Exactly, because when we're judging, we generally have 5 criteria. And the first one's going to be the visual. Is it sexy? Is there something wrong with it? Is there way too much family ratio to bud? Or is there a great crystal structure? Does it look like it was picked a little too early and it's a little too clear in the trichome development? All these things lend to understanding the power of the pot. We have the aroma. Is it very loud? What's it smell like? Not only in its raw form and in the jar, but when you kind of open it up, or even when you smoke it, does the smoke have a distinctive smell to it as well? Same thing with concentrates. Then we have, I believe there was the burnability, cleanliness in the flush. And we have the effect. And the last one would have been, what was it, Tony?
What was that?
What was the last thing, Judge? It was visual, taste.
No.
Oh, taste. That's what it was. The flavor. How does it taste? Does it taste like it smells? Sometimes it's really loud in the jar and it smells great. When you go to hit it, it just kind of gets lost. A lot of oils, I fear, were wonderful at the beginning. We just didn't know how to consume them properly. We're putting them on red hot nails and destroying all those terpenes. Some of those early entries that were OGs that we kind of...
What was Purge? Was Purge in...
That's Purge, cleanliness, that sort of thing. That was depending on which category.
That one...
Yeah, and then of course, if you're doing edibles and topicals, the packaging has a lot to do with the information, the dosing. Is on an edible, is it 5 milligrams? Is it really 5 milligrams? When we test it, do they know how to properly decarboxylate it and convert it? Would you trust the packaging? It's an edible, especially back in the days, you're buying blue balls off the lot. That's the days of yesteryear. And also, what's the ingenuity of it? Are they all brownies and sugar loaded things? We started really delving into the different gamuts. We ran the gamut from, let's see, one of my favorites was the Hungry Man dinner in Michigan. Full, just reheat with everything from the apple cobbler to the ribs to the string beans.
Wayne, that kit came with a cooler. They gave you a cooler because there was also ice cream and other things with the Hungry Man entered that year.
When people have that
pop off for the ice cream,
when they have that much passion about it, they're not just going to do it a little bit and throw, And that goes through with like people, even with flowers. It can be people that grow wonderfully, but if it's not treated wonderfully after it's grown and jarred properly and put in the proper humidity and stuff, it doesn't matter, And so the real people aren't the people on IG that are yelling and screaming all this stuff. They're too busy taking care of all the great shit and producing great stuff. That's really the truth of it. And these competitions are a great way to kind of give them a little light, but also to kind of progress the cannabis scene wherever it is. And that's the passion we have for New York right now. With the scene growing the way it is. I've been working with Brian Gonzalez from Long Island Glass, who's been there he opened his first head shop the day that Pipe Dreams first started and Jerome Baker was raided. He had taken all his money and opened up his first day, and that came through and kind of survived all the way through to the legalities of it now. And now we just had the Great South Bay Festival last weekend out Long Island, and he's allowed to have a booth, and there was dabbing, and the police were there and wanted to know what dabs were and wanted me to show them how to roll joints and took photos with everything.
Police?
And they're allowing, it's a completely different scene. And it's still always a little freaky to me because, I'm old enough that if someone's in uniform, I'm always, if I see someone in a post office uniform, I know better not to go to my pockets, but it's still that, that instinct to survive will always, I think, be there with us. Thankfully, hopefully our children will never have to understand at all the shit that we had to deal with as far as that goes. I pray that happens. And we're getting there. I mean, as evidenced by New York. New York is the capital of the world. It's happening there. The rest of the pieces will fall pretty quickly, I think. I really do.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, having a Connecticut background, how do you feel about Connecticut now jumping on board?
I mean, Connecticut is a weird thing because, first of all, the whole idea of only 4 companies cultivating and then them kind of cornering the market and the medicine's horrible. There's a talk here that was only talk in Connecticut. I mean, I'm sure there's rate just now of sessions and stuff, and it's stupid. It just makes no sense. You can cross over into Great Barrington or all these other places, Springfield, and go buy cannabis, but you don't want them to do it right here and support your own state and stuff. It makes no sense. And so I think as a country, we're all kind of looking at New York to see what it is. In fact, there are people that are coming from California to throw events because they know that it's ripe right now for that scene there, and we welcome it all. We want to be able to have people
without a doubt
and have us look at what they did and add a little bit to it, and that's how events always should be. You take a look at it and you pull and extrapolate from what you think is the best of something, and you kind of make it better and better and better. And that's really kind of the meaning of life. Just leave it a little nicer than you found it if you can, right? And that's what we kind of try to do with these events. And having come from within the community, we feel that we have a much better barometer on what connects to it, as opposed to a lot of people that have come in and corporized cannabis at the moment, and I'm having worked at High Times and seeing that whole changeover, that was part of my exit from there, was because of watching how they were changing the whole Cannabis Cup competition and the stocks and all that cockamamie stuff that, I still don't understand why people don't have pitchforks and aren't burning down that place down because of that.
The cups of yesteryear have gone. It's gone corporate. It's completely crazy to me. Sure. It's no longer, sponsored, good, knowledgeable judges. Now it's sold kits.
Hold on, while we got two people here, what's different? What's different?
What's different?
Well, I mean, we can start with the fact that
don't look at me, man. I'm looking to get the answer. I'm asking what's changed.
The cup today is not. How about the fact you have to enter a pound of fucking oil today? First of all, you have to be licensed through a dispensary. If you're not licensed through a dispensary in that local state that they're running the cup now, you cannot enter. So basically, fuck you to anyone else but the dispensaries.
Yeah, but
the best part about it is you have to enter a pound. Then they take your pound and break it up. A pound of concentrates. Break it up, sell it in judges' kits in these tiny little backpacks, and that's it. And then people vote, send the paper in. Whatever dispensary has the most entries is going to get the biggest nod. So as of 2019, I would say the Cannabis Cup that encompassed anything Sean and I had been a part of was officially dead from that point on. 2019 and before, you could say was a High Times Cannabis Cup. 2019 and after, I would say it's a completely different. It's for a different group of people. It's no longer for us.
It became different when the events didn't have people who actually worked for the magazine involved with it anymore. And that was kind of part of it, was people wanted to come and talk cannabis and trade secrets, and having us be there, we were able to be kind of the catalyst and the forum for that, and start these conversations and these panels, and just people to come and show us what they had, and for us to introduce people, and for people to ask questions, for us to learn too. I mean, it was just as much a learning experience for me as it was for anyone else. I mean, I didn't get paid a lot, but the most valuable thing I got was I got a new education every stop I did on the Cannabis Cup, because it was the evolution of everything, new strains.
Anything that was new went through you, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a great example would be starting with the Cannabis Cups being entered for flowers, and then we had concentrates. And then as the concentrates, I think the first one we had was, there was like a water hash, there was 1 or 2 BHOs, there was a couple of keefs, one that was pressed into a piece of like paper rolled into the cylinder so you can kind of light it and smoke it like a joint. But that was really it. There wasn't, or maybe a syringe or two really, of like RSO, but that was it for the concentrates. But as the years developed on, people would come in and say, enter the Gorilla Glue flower, but then also come and enter their Gorilla Glue oil. And it would show up and I'd look at it and be, well, it's not really an oil, is it? This is, and they say, yeah, it's a wax. So they started adding words like wax. And then you'd come in and they want to differentiate it, because you want to say, well, my Gorilla Glue one and my Gorilla Glue one. You want to say my Gorilla Glue flour one, my Gorilla Glue wax one, or my Gorilla Glue butter, or, and the words got crazier and crazier as they came through, batter, butter,
batter, butter, sugar,
wet sugar, raw sugar, and I got to sit there and see people literally come up with these names as they came up, because they'd say, how do I want to name it, as opposed to just being the flower entry, or people like Mike from Exotic Genetics coming up, not even having a name for his strains and just saying, what do you think it looks like, and being like, well, I don't want to get too involved. Okay, involved, just extrapolating names from the moment, and kind of fun to sit around and see that happen a little bit. That's a whole other story of people just changing names of what they're growing, and rather than using the lineage to help code the names, if you know what I mean, or just buying seeds and renaming it after you pop seeds. That's kind of a real common practice in home grows. Yeah. And that was one of the curses of the very first Cannabis Cup. Someone had entered a flower and it won first place, and we had to get together because the name of the entry was God's Pussy. And we had a Valerie Corral, who was just a great woman activist in the cannabis world, and just activism in general. She was going to go up and be the announcer, so can we have her say God's Pussy? And being a magazine, we said, no, you can't. You can't audit something like that. You got to let them go with it. And she announced it, and everyone went crazy and laughed. And the guy went up there, and he simply said, "I just want to thank Sub Cool because I bought, I think, like Vortex seeds or whatever it is, and popped and called me God's Pussy." And we were just like, then you should have called me Vortex or whatever the original strain is from Sub Cool. It's great that you agree with that. And a great example of you don't have to be a great grower to grow great cannabis. You pop one seed, anyone can pop one great, wonderful plant. It's the truth is the people that come back in competitions and win continuously, those are the people that are really kind of the stars of our community when it comes to cultivars.
Let me ask you a question, Sean. Do you think ultimately that the influence of the rap culture at High Times led to the demise of High Times?
I wouldn't say led to it, but it's certainly there was a great connection to it before I got there and at the beginning, especially the niece of one of the owners was dating Snoop's son for a little while, so we had a real deep connection there for a little bit. And he came and started doing Cannabis Cups for us, and we had, I think it was our first legal cannabis joint in Denver was with Snoop Dogg as Snoop Lion. I think that was the timing of the Snoop Lion days. But I think the demise of that when it pertains to the rap and hip hop came when the corporates came in and decided that they knew what our culture wanted. They'd come into a place where we were very successful in having 30, 40,000 people show up for an event and making our company, I'm sure lots of money. I'm not really involved in that, but I'm sure they did great. But they came in and said, well, you know what? We want to throw a festival and book $1 million acts. And they don't understand that people are in Cannabis Cup all weekend in the heat, smoking more cannabis and the best cannabis they have in their whole life from, starting 10 in the morning throughout the event, but let's face it, we're all baking, right? All through the day. When it comes to 10 o'clock at night, your crowd is not that much of a crowd. And when they do show up, they don't know, we've had some instances. Kid Cudi, best show in Denver, he came out, but, came off stage and said, I don't get it. I mean, are they enjoying me? Because everyone is quiet. And like, yeah, they all fucking love you, man. They're all just, they're vibing you. There's a famous time when, was it Lil Wayne? Yeah, Lil Wayne came on, and it was a concentrate cup, and it was 110 degrees, and we had 8,000 people in a plane hangar that had been waiting for him. He was fighting with cash money, so he was like an hour and a half late. And everyone's stoned as fuck, and it's now 10:30 at night. He came on, started getting all hypey, and people just held up their phones, and halfway through the first song, he said, fuck this, don't ever book this for me again, and threw his mic down and walked off stage.
Walked off, yep.
Because he thought like no one was into him, and it wasn't that. It's people smoking massive amounts of cannabis. People have given me counters walking around to the different vendors to see how many dabs I can take in a day, and we're flipping over the hundreds. So, people are smoking their asses off there with the free booths and the free chocolate fountains and free medicated tacos and free is that water medicated or is it not medicated? You don't know what's and the way they were planned and laid out was you go through all the booths, get shot out at the food vendors, eat your food, regain your and drive right back in. There's this big circle, that's kind of invented there. And so the idea of booking these big acts and not really paying off, they were missing their mark. The best concerts we had were like when they were before the Cup, like the Friday night before Cups, and doing things like that and collaborating with other people, whether it was Eagles of Death Metal or Snoop Dogg or Slightly Stupid at Red Rock, stuff like that. But for us to incorporate that in the festival portion was a bit of a miss. As far as the magazine goes, I mean, we had some great stuff like Mount Cushmore with Method and Snoop and the Steve Bloom era, where he really kind of connected with those guys pretty well. So I mean, I did hip hop have a hand in it. I think, it had a hand in showing that these guys who came in who didn't trust the working formula and thought they could do what they did. I mean, they have a different vision for it. High Times isn't one person. It's this entity that will grow and be around long before I was here and long after I'm here. It's not one person. It's owned by several people, a company right now, and who knows in the future who else will own it. And hopefully one day it can go back to its kind of, glory that I held it in reverence. And like I said before, the people over there that are great too. John Capetta has a great vision as far as the art, and he truly loves cannabis himself too, and he's bringing in some writers. But the whole scene when it comes to writing and reporting and stuff like that is vastly changed as well. A lot of these places don't have staff writers anymore. They're resorting to people that are just getting out of college, who are then going on Facebook and IG and getting information that way, as if that's news and from reliable sources. And that's kind of part of the demise of news reporting and a lot of writings going on right now. There are some great magazines like Leaf and Sensi and those magazines that are covering some stuff right now, but at the moment it's a little sparse.
Hey man, well listen, I want to thank you, man, for blessing us with some time today, reaching out to our audience here, man, and schooling us a little bit about the Cups, High Times history, as well as giving us a little culture about yourself.
It's great just to be a part of it, and like I said, I was a kid and grew up with it, and I was able to experience it. And now I'm looking at it in the mirror like an old friend and wondering what's next for it, and even better yet, what's next for cannabis. And now that we're given a forum where we can all kind of scream from the mountaintops that we love cannabis, we have this opportunity to show, unfortunately my grandmother's not alive anymore, but she never thought I had a real job. I was with High Times. I couldn't have gone much further in the field of things that I wanted to do if I was writing about cannabis at the time. But hopefully we can take cannabis and have it be a beacon and show people that is relevant and there's nothing bad about it. In fact, that it's very positive in a time where we need things that are very positive, whether it's environmental or medical or spiritual. And so to be able to change the relationship that people have with cannabis at this time is real important to us, right?
Absolutely. Meaningful. Hey, but listen, man, before we get up out of here, Sean, at the end of every show, we do what's called a Fave 5. All right? The Fave 5 just consists of me asking you 5 questions. These 5 questions you just answer randomly, whatever comes to your head first. All right?
Shoot.
First one. Worst cup ever.
Worst cup ever is going to be Las Vegas without a doubt. The non-cup.
Why?
The new management at High Times is right when Kennedy had passed away, and we gone through a couple of new CEOs that had different visions. We don't want cannabis in the magazine. It's about lifestyle. Like Red Bull isn't about Red Bull anymore. It's about lifestyle. Figured they can get around the laws in Vegas by having a cannabis cup on Indian land because it was not under federal jurisdiction, which at the time, I forget the prick's name, and the attorney general at the time under who it was, but he had it out for us. And put a nix on that. I think we showed up, we opened up for about 2 or 3 hours, and the Fed showed up and shut us down. And it's Vegas, man. You go there and have a good time. And it was the non-Cannabis Cup, Cannabis Cup.
Not on the Fed show, the good time is over.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know.
Yeah. All right, so let's flip that. Best cup ever.
There's so many that come to mind that just had some epic moments.
No, I need to hear the most epic moment, the one that stands out to you the most, Sean.
You know what? It's personally, I know people can look at me sideways on this one. Personally, I think it was New England, because once again, it was kind of a non-cup cup where we were supposed to have one, and we had a venue, and at the last moment they squeezed the venue and said, "We'll take away your beverage license," or whatever it is, and we couldn't do it. And the company sent me and a helper to run a whole fucking Cannabis Cup at a friend's club on our own, rather than 300 volunteers and a staff of people. They sent us to go. And being from New England, I was like, I'm all over it, man. We're going up there. We went up to Rhode Island and and put on a good time for about 300 or 400 people throughout the weekend that were disappointed that the real cup wasn't going on. But when they came and did this, we got to hang out and smoke mad weed. And Redman came out, hung out, smoked mad weed, and talked to everyone. And he'd been judging for us for a couple of times, so he's willing to lend his voice to cannabis and the cause always. Mm-hmm. But just to be there and do something like that. The places that we go that are smaller, that Cannabis Cups never happen, like Alaska or Michigan at first, to see the smile and the wonderment in people's face going, I can't believe it's really happening, and the sky's not fucking falling. I've dreamt about this all my life and stuff. It really sends chills the first time, because I remember going to Amsterdam for the first time and going into a smoke shop and being able to watch Monday Night Football and smoke a bong at a bar for the first time in my life. I don't drink or anything, but I was in public smoking a bong, watching Monday Night Football, and I cried. I'm like, holy shit! If I was at home, I'd go
Greenhouse fucking milkshake are the best.
I know, it was the best. I don't go to bars because I smoke weed and I hate when people are completely drunk and shit. But if I can go and have fun, then I'm fun too. Then we're cool. And so that these moments. It's really about moments. But when you say overall as a cup, New England really has a special place for me, simply because of it being kind of grassroots and so small, and really being able to
one of the only cups that was like the old school cup, because it wasn't an American cup.
Yeah, and I didn't have to work. I just sat around, got to get high with everyone and say, here's all the entries, let's all get high and do
Dude, that was like the last Cannabis Cup when they shut us down, and then the whole weekend we just fucking raged and had a good time.
Can we give a shout out to Justin? What was the spot's name again?
It was Justin, and he holds the Cultivators Cup. It was called the Gray Area, but now it's called the THC Club, the Tetrahydra Club.
The Tetrahydra Club, that's what it's. Tetrahydra, that's right. Okay. Shout out to Tetrahydra Club. You're making waves up there. Every part of the world, they've got these people that are really beacons and these flagships, these center points where people can congregate, and they've kind of always stood out and ruffled some feathers, and now's their time to shine and for us to celebrate their sacrifices and things they did. So shout out to people like him and Brian and all those people.
All right, number 3. Ash or flower?
Ash or flower?
Yeah.
I mean, Desert Isle, ash. You know what? I the truth is, there's another category, and that's hash joints, and that's literally my world now. It's full. People call, there's no full spectrum hash or concentrate or any of that up there. I'm sorry. The only thing that's full spectrum is flower. I'm sorry, did you lose me there? The only thing that's full spectrum is flower. So when you can take a 0.5 gram of oil, put that snake in that grass, lay it down there, and roll a joint. I know you like blunts, man. It kills the cannabis. I understand you don't do it for the flavor necessarily, you do it because it's a different high. But that's what we do with hash joints. It elevates it, I can smoke a hash joint for an hour if you roll it properly and put a nice gram in there, And so I'm going to kind of cheat here and say hash joint is right down the middle, right? Because you 2 or 3 or 4 of those a day and you're fine. And that's truly the full spectrum.
I'm going to answer this for him. His table says it all.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 flower pieces. I don't know, there's 400 or 500 rigs in this house somewhere.
All right, number 4. Give me the 3 strands you smoke the most.
OG. Chem, Sour Diesel, and OG. And honestly, the guys down at in the city have some great road right now that has a lot of gas to it too. Those guys over at JJ and Top Dog, are great cultivars and keepers of great genetics. I know there's some things coming down the pipeline with Pinsky and AJ and the Sour Diesel, and they're really coming out strong with that one, and I'm excited to see how that winds up. But it's, you can say these names, but the truth is it's about having the right pheno. And so I can say Chem 91, and you can say, yeah, Chem 91, but chances are most people haven't really had the Chem 91 that I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it's a shame, because that's where the real talent is in these guys, is recognizing the proper phenos and then keeping it treasured like a child and keeping that along. And now that we have cloning and tissue samples and tissue, all this work, it's easier to keep these genetics going. And people are going to be losing all the raids and stuff soon. So, seed banks. It's all about seed banks and genetic banks. But yeah, so Chem and Sour are predominant, and anything with the word OG in it.
Okay. All right, now listen. I'm gonna flip this last question, because normally we do it a certain way, but since it's you and we got a hot topic, I'm putting it to you like this. High Times calls you, right?
Sure.
They want you to put an event together. They want you to put an event together. However you want to do it, they're giving you complete autonomy. Set this shit up, run it, do whatever you want to do, right? Now, at this event, you're going to get a chance to sesh with 5 people. 5 people, dead or alive. Who are you inviting to this sesh that High Times has given you the prestige to put on full autonomy, all you? Who are the 5 people you inviting to sesh with you?
Wow. I guess you can try to change the world and hit some of our forefathers and show them what weed's like, and maybe they would have understood it a little bit better when they're writing the laws.
Hey, I said dead or alive.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're talking about like just dream, really, I would love to start with Tom Prasad, who started the Cannabis Cup, and I know he's a character, and he was born during a time of tricksters and the Summer of Love. I'd also have to say, being a huge Grateful Dead fan, and being friends with Trixie, I'd love to have been able to spend time and maybe get high with her father, Jerry Garcia, who's also kind of a lighthouse in my life when it comes to music and spirituality and connecting, and music and cannabis is all part of that for me. I think I would really like to smoke with Barack Obama, man. I'm part of that Choon gang. Let's get him back in the forefront of smoking, so he can help. He's a great lawyer. That's where he started. He should, now that he doesn't have to worry about that shit, shouldn't he be throwing it down? It's true. And I would love to smoke with Martin Scorsese. People say that smokers are lazy and don't accomplish things, and they're bad people, whatever. All these old stigmas. But when you really look at people like Martin Scorsese, who smokes cannabis and loves jazz, and are the cream of the crop. If you look at the people that run our world, both in arts and in intellect, they generally are people that are open and admittedly used and consumed before. And just to pontificate and have a great time, I bet you Neil Tyson DeGrasse is a hoot to get high with. And will let me know some secrets will probably scare the shit out of you guys. Not a lot. I don't know if that's 5, but that's where we're at.
That's your 5. That's your 5. Hey, man, like I said before, man, thanks for coming out, blessing us with your time today, giving us a little quick lesson on high times and a little bit of what you do. I felt like something was on my shoulder right there, man. My bad. But yeah, man, thanks for coming out and bless us with your time, man. Anytime you want to get back on here in politics, you got anything you want to promote, anything you got coming up, let us know, man.
The only caveat on that is I insist we sesh together.
Hey, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, you know what? Hey, the next episode that we do, we'll do it here in the studio and we'll sesh it up.
Perfect. That's the one thing that cannabis really does. No one wants to sit alone.
Brings people together.
Man. It brings people together and makes want people to pass the joint. You know, it's not even about showing people great weed. I just want to pass you the joint and watch the smile come on your face like it came out.
Absolutely, man. Most definitely. Next episode.
Thank you, Elite. Thank you, Sean.
Episode we do here, man. Hey, Elite, I told you we had a banger. We don't lie to you. Tell a friend and tell a friend.
Them Elite boys is at it again.
Hey, peace, y'all.